Hello, welcome. It's Dr. Drredfrizzle here, and today I'm going to be talking to you a bit about foods, diet, and health. Okay. So first of all, I'll describe with you this a little bit of recap. I'll describe with you the different food groups and how we get them from what foods give it them to us and stuff. So first of all, proteins is one of them. Fats, carbohydrates, fibre, which we get from like food and fruit and veg. Sorry, water, vitamins, and minerals. Okay, so it should be 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There we go. They're all there. Right, proteins are used for growth and repair, and we get them from foods like fish, meat, eggs, beans. There's quite a few foods that give them to us. Fats we get them from like cheese and sweets and chocolate. Carbohydrates you get from foods like bread, rice, pasta. Fibre is any like vegetables, so like broccoli, carrots, cauliflower. Water we just get from drinking, so I'll just draw you a cup with some water. Vitamins and minerals you get vitamins from things like fruit and veg and dairy, and you get minerals from salts and milk. And the main one you get from these two is the mineral that you get from these two things is known as calcium, and this is used to help build like strong bones and stuff. You don't need to know too much detail about that. You'll learn about that in a later video probably. The other thing you need to know is about iron. Iron's another mineral, and we get this from eating liver. Right, okay, so these are your main food groups. So we need to talk a little bit about how these are broken down in the body. So I'll start off with proteins for you. Proteins are broken down, well pretty much all of these are broken down by things called enzymes. Now we have these in our body, and the ones that break down proteins are known as protease enzymes. The ones that break down fats are called lipase. The ones that break down carbohydrates are called carbohydrates. The ones that break down fruit and veg don't exist because fruit and veg isn't broken down, because I'll talk to you that in a little bit more detail about that in a few minutes. Vitamins aren't broken down, or minerals aren't, so all of these things here are not broken down. I'll draw you an arrow from minerals over to here, and vitamins actually, because basically there's a few different types of vitamins. There's A, C, and D. You don't need to know too much about these different letters of vitamins, but all you need to know is deficiency, which means lack of vitamin A, can lead to blindness, okay? Which means you lose the ability to see things properly. C is lack of, can cause something called scurvy. Now you might have heard this, sailors get scurvy, and it's because of lack of fruit and veg, because vitamin C is provided from fruit and veg. Vitamin D is provided by the sun primarily. You can also get it from like certain oils like cod liver oil, so I've got cod liver oil there. But deficiency of this vitamin, what it can lead to is something called rickets, which is where bones weaken or bow. You might not have heard of this, but bow is basically where your bones get a certain sort of bend in them. So you might see your leg bones of someone with rickets like this. So you find your leg bone actually bows outwards or inwards. Doesn't really matter which way. It's just basically you need to know about the weakening of that bone so it can bow or curve. Okay. So that's all your deficiencies discussed. You also need to know the order in which these nutrients get into our bodies. First of all, it's ingestion, which is basically us eating things. After that, there's a process called digestion. After that, there's a process called absorption. And the last process is excretion, or egestion actually, should have wrote. Egestion is the process of removing waste from the body. Okay? So, I've discussed with you these different enzymes. They convert these food groups, they break these down, but you need to know the products of this reaction. So, proteins are broken down by protease, but they're broken down into things called amino acids. You don't know too much about the details of these, you just need to know they are, the proteins and other nutrients are broken down into certain products. You need to know what the products are. Fats are broken down by lipase, and they're broken down into glycerol, which is spelled with a C in the middle, glycerol, and fatty acids. You also need to know carbohydrates are broken down into sugars. These can otherwise be known as starches, because carbohydrates can be just called starches. Sorry, I'll draw you an arrow from carbohydrates, because it's not the enzyme. There isn't types of these enzymes called starches. Starches are what is broken down by the enzyme into sugars. Okay, and the rest of it isn't broken down at all. So they're the products of those particular reactions. You also need to know about the adaptations of the small intestine wall. So first of all, I'll draw you the small intestine wall. As I discussed before, you might remember this from a previous video of mine. These structures are called villi, and what they are is that they're basically there to increase the surface area. I'll just write SA to shorten it down. It actually stands for surface area. And what happens is your food moves along here, and your enzymes break it down. Your enzymes are released from an organ known as the pancreas. So I'll draw this up here. It's attached to your small intestine. So this is called the pancreas. Now, tubes that connect particular glands or organs to other, like tubes and stuff, are known as ducts, usually. A duct is just another word for a tube. So this particular one is called the pancreatic duct, for obvious reasons, because it takes enzymes from the pancreas and transports them into the small intestine. You also need to know that there's a good blood supply around here. Good blood supply from capillaries. Okay? So that's basically how absorption takes place. You also need to know a little bit about smoking and drugs and alcohol and stuff. So now I'll move on to this section. So you can have recreational drugs, which are things that people take in their spare time, which is recreation, just means like as a hobby. And you can have medicines. Now, recreational drugs, there are some particularly illegal, harmful ones, which mean they're against the rules of the country, so you'll get put in prison if you take them, or like use them or deal them to people, which is where you sell them to other people, which is all bad, all very bad. Recreational drugs, there are some good ones though, well, not good, but they do have a number of effects of the lots to do with the body that aren't necessarily that good, but you're allowed to use them. Like alcohol is a drug, and cigarettes aren't actually a drug in themselves, but they have a drug in called nicotine. Same goes for coffee. Coffee isn't the same as smoking, so don't worry, coffee isn't harmful, smoking is, and I'll give you a bit more detail about that in a minute. But coffee is not harmful, but it's got a drug in called caffeine, and caffeine is a stimulant. So I'll just quickly describe to you what a stimulant drug means. A stimulant is something that excites you, which speeds up your reaction times, which I don't know if you remember from when I spoke about the nervous system, but there's like these tubes called neurons that connect up, which join your nerves together. And what these do is they spread impulses, which are basically, supposing you put your hand on a hot cooker, is the example I used last time, you'll feel it because an impulse travels down your nerve cells and travels up to your brain and then back to your effector, which is like a muscle, to pull your arm away. and so that's how that works. And stimulants basically increase the movement of this impulse. And there's also other drugs called depressants, which an example of this is indeed alcohol, as I discussed before with you. And alcohol slows down your reactions, and you should not drink and drive under the influence of alcohol, which basically means if you've had some alcohol. That's what I want to talk to you about in terms of legal drugs. And again, smoking can lead to a number of different diseases and stuff, so I'll just quickly go through them. There's lung cancer. You don't need to know too much about this, so I won't go into that much detail with that. Bronchitis, and the other one is emphysema. Emphysema, I'll draw it down here so we have a bit more space. It's basically where, like, you know, you smoke, what normally happens in your lungs is you have these little hairs called cilia that move dirt up your throat and like out of your body. But what happens with smoking is the tar actually paralyzes, which means prevents these cilia wafting all the dust and stuff out of your lungs. So basically, cigarette smoke contains this tar, which stops these cilia working. So a load of mucus, it's called, that these cilia would normally move, gets stuck in our lungs. And what it does is it blocks the tubes called bronchi or bronchioles. I discussed them before with you in a previous video, which lead to your small air sacs called alveoli. And what this does is it blocks up these tubes, and so your mucus blocking up the tubes means that the air sacs, like the air becomes trapped in them, so they explode, and this is known as emphysema. So what happens is your air sacs usually have quite a lot of like definition like this, but when loads of pressure builds up in them, as you would expect, like all the air pressure pushes against these little ridges here, so it ends up just like that, and it's very deformed, which means that the air still goes into them and still goes out, so we can still breathe properly, but the air isn't held here enough, so there's less gas exchange, as I discussed before with you, which means less oxygen enters the blood and less can be used for respiration and stuff. The other thing you need to know about bronchitis is basically again caused by the mucus. It irritates your cilia and stuff in the lungs, and basically we cough, which is chronic bronchitis, which means it lasts. The chronic bit of chronic bronchitis means that it lasts for more than 6 months, but it's basically the bronchitis bit. All that means is coughing. So basically, we cough to try and remove this mucus from our lungs because it's getting trapped in there. But you have to put up with the cough, which is caused by this build-up of mucus, which is bronchitis. Emphysema is where the exploding air sacs, this bit, and lung cancer, you don't know too much detail, so I won't go through that with you today. There's illegal drugs, and some of these are depressants again, and some are stimulants. Now, depressants can be like heroin and cannabis, and stimulants can be things like ecstasy. And basically what this means is depressants, these are all really harmful, by the way. What they do is they slow down your reactions, and they sort of make you, cannabis even makes you forget things and stops your concentration levels working, so they're all really bad for you. The only reason why people take them is because they get pressured into it by their friends. Their friends think they're cool by taking them, but they're actually just sort of hurting themselves for no reason. Stimulants, ecstasy, it makes people feel all excited, that's wonderful, but it actually harms your heart and the liver. Now you might think, well, the heart beats fast, so it makes sense. When you're excited, your heart beats faster. That's sort of generally what happens. But the liver, you might think, well, why is that affected? The reason for that is the liver usually breaks down these drugs into the products, and obviously if the liver has to break down too much drugs, it eventually fails and it can't work properly because it's doing too much. So basically these drugs are all really bad. That's pretty much it, I think, apart from there's you can have drugs that are injected by needles. Now these needles can spread certain diseases. One of these is called HIV, And the other one you need to know about is called hepatitis. You don't need to know too much details about these, but all you need to know is that these are things that are caused by dirty needles, because obviously people share needles that use these particular types of drugs. So anyway, thanks for listening. I hope this has answered all your questions about diet, drugs, and health. And good luck with your key stage 3. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.